"Just kill me fast," she whispered, her voice cracked and trembling as the rancher pulled the heavy, mud-stained blanket off her frail body. But the moment his eyes met what was underneath, his calloused hands froze and he stumbled back in horror. His heart pounded like a war drum, his breath stolen by the sight no man should ever witness. For beneath that blanket lay not just a broken body, but a soul shattered by cruelty so dark it left scars deeper than any wound. The rancher's name was Thomas. He was a man of solitude, living alone in the wide, endless stretch of his ranch where silence was both a friend and an enemy. That night, when the storm howled and the winds carried cries he thought were ghosts, he almost ignored them. But something pulled him to the barn, something told him that fate had planted a test at his doorstep. And there she was, a young woman, no older than 20, drenched, bleeding, her skin marred by welts and bruises, clutching the blanket as though it was the last barrier between her and the world. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice breaking with anger and pity. But she only shook her head, tears streaming down her face, repeating the words like a prayer of surrender. "Just kill me fast, please, just end it." The Thomas knelt beside her, his strong frame trembling. He had seen storms tear barns apart, seen wolves tear into his cattle, but never had he seen a person so destroyed that death seemed kinder than living. In that moment, he knew he could not walk away, not from her, not from the chance to prove that humanity still existed in a world that had stripped her of hope. Days turned into weeks. At first, she wouldn't speak, barely ate, and flinched whenever his shadow crossed the room. She was a caged bird, wings broken, eyes vacant. But Thomas was patient. He cooked meals and left them by her bedside without a word. He repaired her torn shoes when she slept. He even set out his late wife's dress by the fire, hoping the warmth of a home might one day melt the ice around her heart. Slowly she began to speak. Her name was Emily. Her story came in fragments, like shards of glass cutting into Thomas's soul. She had trusted the wrong people, people who promised her a better life, but instead dragged her into a nightmare of abuse, betrayal, and captivity. She had escaped, but the price of freedom was written all over her body. Thomas listened without judgment. He didn't push her to forget, didn't tell her to be strong when she felt weak. He simply sat there, a quiet guardian, until one evening she whispered, "Why are you helping me? Why didn't you just do what I asked and end it?" He looked into her eyes and said, "Because no one deserves to die believing they're worthless. You're still here, Emily. And as long as you're breathing, there's a chance to write a different ending." Something shifted that night. It wasn't immediate, but it was real. Emily began to heal, not just her wounds but her spirit. She helped in the ranch little by little, feeding the horses, mending fences, laughing softly at Thomas's grumpy old dog humor. The ranch, once a prison of silence, now echoed with small signs of life. But healing was never a straight path. One day, when she caught her reflection in the mirror, Emily broke down. "I'll never be clean again," she cried. "Never be the girl I was." Thomas placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes firm yet gentle. "Maybe not. But you can be stronger. Scars don't mean you're broken. They mean you survived. And surviving, that's the bravest thing of all." Months passed. Seasons changed. Emily was no longer the trembling girl under a blanket. She stood tall, helping Thomas run the ranch, her laughter now fuller, her eyes no longer empty but alive. She still carried scars, but now she carried them with dignity as proof of battles she had fought and won. One evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Emily stood with Thomas on the porch. She whispered, "That night, I begged you to kill me fast, and instead you gave me life slow. Thank you." Thomas smiled, a rare tear slipping down his weathered cheek. "Don't thank me, Emily, you chose to live. That's your strength, not mine." The story of Emily and Thomas is not just about survival, but about the power of kindness, patience, and hope. It teaches us that no matter how dark life becomes, there is always someone out there willing to reach into the storm and pull us back into the light. And if you're watching this, remember, your scars don't define you, your courage does. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us of the strength we all carry inside. Because sometimes, the difference between despair and hope is just one person who refuses to let go. The storm that night was merciless, howling across the barren fields like a beast set loose. Thomas, the rancher, tightened his coat as he checked the barn doors. That's when he heard it, a faint cry, carried by the wind. At first, he thought it was the shriek of the storm, but then it came again, softer, weaker, almost human. His heart quickened. Lantern in hand, he followed the sound and found her. A young woman collapsed against the hay bales, soaked through, clutching a blanket that was more mud than fabric. She raised her head, and her lips trembling, and whispered the words that would haunt him forever. "Just kill me fast." But when Thomas pulled back the blanket and saw the bruises, the cuts, the brokenness, he stumbled back, nearly dropping his lantern. It wasn't just horror, it was rage, sorrow, and helplessness all at once. Cliffhanger pause for narration. Chapter 2, The Stranger in the House. Thomas carried her inside, though she fought weakly at first. He laid her on the spare bed, covered her with clean sheets, and tried to coax her to drink warm broth. She refused, whispering, why are you helping me? Just let me go." But Thomas didn't answer. He simply pulled a chair beside the bed, folded his hands, and sat in silence. He wasn't a man of many words, but he knew that sometimes presence spoke louder than speech. That night, as the storm raged outside, a different storm raged inside Emily's heart, the storm of memory, of pain, of betrayal. Cliffhanger pause. Chapter 3, A Broken Story. Days passed. Emily began to eat small portions, though her eyes still carried a faraway emptiness. One evening her voice broke the silence. "My name is Emily." Thomas listened, not interrupting, as fragments of her past spilled out. She had trusted people who promised her safety, but they turned her life into a nightmare. She had been used, beaten, and left for dead. "I ran," she whispered, her voice shaking. "But running doesn't make me clean again." Thomas's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to hunt down the monsters who did this, but instead, he looked at her and said, "You're here now. That means you survived. And surviving is no small thing." The cliffhanger pause. Chapter 4, The Slow Healing. Healing was not easy. Some days Emily refused to leave her room, terrified of her own shadow. Other days she helped Thomas feed the horses, her hands shaking as she touched the animals. But Thomas never rushed her. He offered quiet encouragement, a steady hand, and the safety of routine. One afternoon, as she looked at her reflection, Emily broke down. "I'll never be clean again. I'll never be who I was." Thomas placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe not. But scars don't mean you're broken. Scars mean you lived." For the first time, Emily wept openly, not out of despair but release. Cliffhanger pause. Chapter 5, A New Dawn. Months turned into seasons. The ranch, once silent, now carried new sounds. Emily's laughter as she learned to ride, her voice singing softly as she helped mend fences. She was still scarred, but no longer powerless. She was no longer the girl begging for death, but a woman fighting for life. One evening, standing on the porch under a sky painted with gold, Emily whispered, "That night I asked you to kill me fast. Instead, you gave me life slow, you gave me hope." Thomas's eyes glistened as he replied, "Don't thank me. You chose to live. That's your victory." The wind carried their silence, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with peace. Final chapter. The message. Emily's story is more than survival. It's a reminder that no matter how deep the scars, no matter how dark the night, healing is possible. It takes kindness, patience, and courage to rise again. And if you're listening to this story, remember, your scars don't define you. They prove your strength. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. You never know. Your share could give someone else the hope they need tonight. Because sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to let you give up.